Jim Cramer's How to Make Money in Any Market is written as both a battle manual and a memoir of hard-earned lessons, shaped by decades of surviving bull runs, crashes, panics, and manias. The book's core promise is not that markets are predictable, but that investors can prepare themselves to profit regardless of conditions if they understand how markets actually behave rather than how they wish them to behave. Cramer frames investing as an active discipline that rewards preparation, flexibility, and emotional control, and he repeatedly emphasizes that success comes from process, not predictions. The story begins with Cramer explaining that markets move in cycles driven by psychology, liquidity, and power, not just fundamentals. He argues that investors fail because they treat every market as if it were the same, applying a single strategy whether prices are soaring or collapsing. Instead, he urges readers to diagnose the environment first. Is capital flowing freely or drying up? Is fear dominant or greed unchecked? These questions determine what kinds of investments can work, and ignoring them is, in his view, the root of most losses. Cramer introduces the idea that there are distinct market regimes, each with its own rules. In strong bull markets, momentum and growth are rewarded, and investors can afford to buy great companies even when valuations seem stretched. In sideways or uncertain markets, stock picking becomes more selective, favoring companies with visible earnings, dividends, and pricing power. In bear markets, preservation of capital becomes paramount, and even excellent companies can become terrible investments if the environment is hostile. A major theme throughout the book is respect for cash. Cramer treats cash not as dead money but as ammunition. He shares stories of how having cash during market crashes allowed him to buy exceptional companies at generational bargains while others were forced sellers. Holding cash is framed as an active decision, a form of risk management that gives investors flexibility and psychological calm when volatility strikes. Another central lesson is that not all stocks are equal in all conditions. Cramer categorizes companies by how they behave when money is tight or loose. Cyclical stocks thrive when economies accelerate but collapse when growth slows. Defensive stocks offer stability when fear rises but lag when optimism returns. Recognizing these tendencies allows investors to rotate rather than cling stubbornly to positions that no longer fit the market climate. Cramer spends considerable time discussing the importance of earnings, arguing that over the long term, earnings drive stock prices even if short-term sentiment overwhelms logic. He explains how to read earnings reports and conference calls as narratives rather than raw numbers. Management tone, guidance, and honesty often matter more than whether a company beats estimates by a penny. Investors who listen carefully can detect turning points before they appear in headlines. Risk management is treated as a moral obligation to oneself. Cramer is blunt that taking oversized positions or refusing to admit mistakes can destroy years of disciplined work. He encourages investors to trim positions as they rise, lock in gains, and never allow a single stock to dominate a portfolio. His storytelling here often references painful losses from his own career, reinforcing that humility is learned through experience, not theory. The book also addresses the emotional traps that sabotage investors. Cramer describes fear as contagious and greed as intoxicating, both amplified by media and social pressure. He urges readers to develop rules that remove emotion from decision-making, such as predefined exit points and position sizes. Discipline, in his telling, is what separates professionals from gamblers, especially when markets become chaotic. Cramer devotes attention to understanding the role of institutions and money flows. Large funds, hedge funds, and algorithms move markets in ways that individual investors cannot ignore. By watching where capital is flowing and which sectors are being accumulated or abandoned, investors can align themselves with powerful trends instead of fighting them. He frames this not as insider knowledge but as pattern recognition accessible to anyone paying attention. Storytelling plays a major role as Cramer recounts past market crises, from sudden crashes to prolonged bear markets. These stories are not nostalgic but instructional, showing how similar emotions repeat across decades even as technologies and products change. His message is that markets evolve in form but not in nature, and those who study history gain emotional resilience when panic returns. A recurring insight is that diversification is dynamic, not static. Cramer criticizes the idea of blindly holding the same allocation regardless of conditions. Instead, diversification should reflect current risks and opportunities, shifting between sectors, styles, and even asset classes as the environment changes. This flexibility, he argues, allows investors to stay engaged without being reckless. Cramer also discusses the importance of conviction paired with skepticism. He encourages investors to do deep research and then act decisively when opportunities arise, but to constantly challenge their own assumptions. Being right once does not guarantee continued success, and markets punish complacency faster than ignorance. Curiosity, in his view, is a defensive weapon. The book emphasizes that investing is not about brilliance but endurance. Cramer frames success as the ability to stay in the game through multiple cycles without catastrophic losses. Compounding works only for those who survive, and survival depends on avoiding emotional blow-ups, excessive leverage, and blind faith in any single narrative. Toward the end, Cramer returns to the idea of personal responsibility. He rejects the notion that markets are unfair casinos rigged against individuals, arguing instead that individuals fail because they refuse to adapt. Education, preparation, and humility give investors a fighting chance in any market, even against larger players. The market does not care about intentions, only actions. The book closes with a message of empowerment grounded in realism. Cramer does not promise easy riches or foolproof systems. Instead, he offers a philosophy of active engagement, emotional control, and constant learning. By understanding market environments, respecting risk, and treating investing as a craft rather than a gamble, he argues that it is possible not just to survive but to make money in any market.